So I'm just very grateful that with everything that has encompassed our friendship, you being a leader in Christ brought me to Christ, and our friendship became so much stronger. Like who we are now versus who we were, completely different. Completely different, irrecognizable. And it's God. It's no other person who could have been the reason as to why this is what it is. Everything that has happened in perfect timing. Like when you want to talk about God's timing, that thing is no joke.
No, it's no joke.
I could have not imagined when I was 15, 16 years old, the girl that my boyfriend had class with was going to be my best friend.
Daydream with me, let your mind explore all the things we were created for. Possibilities, an open door that keeps us reaching out for more.
Hello and welcome back to the Guava's Grace podcast channel, where we show gratitude for the grace of God and we use our gifts to glorify Him. Today I have a very special guest on the podcast channel today for something a lot different than what I've been doing. And I love different because different is good, and I want to make sure that you guys get quality content. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is just by showing you a little peek into my life of vulnerability and the people that are special to me. So I have my friend, my best friend here, Janel, okay, another woman of God, and we're just going to have a very candid, authentic conversation for everybody who just wants to see something relatable and who's ever had a friendship where you've been through a lot together, you've experienced a lot together, and God was still at the center of that. So welcome to the podcast, Janel.
Thank you, friend. I'm so happy to be here, friend. Thank you, girl. I love you.
I love you too.
I'm so happy that you decided to invite me onto the podcast because I know this is your baby.
Yes.
You worked so hard on this, friend, and the one thing that I'm like super proud of is you just always being obedient to your calling, no matter what it looks like. You're like, okay, this is mine. I'm doing this, God said, and I'm going to continue to do it. So I'm just happy that you decided to open this space and for me to just be in your world for a minute. Because if y'all don't know, Janae is like the hardest working woman I know. And for me to just be here and see in real time what she puts into her craft, into her purpose, I'm happy to be here, girl.
Aww. Thank you so much. I'm happy to have you because one of the things that I have struggled with is working on my craft, maintaining relationships, being a mom, dealing with different situations, grief and all that stuff, and then still being able to pour into people. And it's so crazy, guys, because she always talks about how our relationship is we give each other the same amount of love. It's one of those things where if she's weaker or I'm weaker, we're both there to support each other, and we equally pour into each other, which is a very rare experience that I feel like a lot of people don't ever get to have, especially within the Christian community. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today was how we met. Like, I'm about to grill you. Like, how did we meet? What's the details? How did this come to fruition? Because I think you could tell it a little bit better than me because your perspective has always shined a little bit more detail on how we developed our friendship and how it began so long ago, even though we didn't even know God was working on us. Yeah. So you can tell, and just speak up loud enough for them to hear you. Okay. You just kind of tell from your perspective, and then I can kind of piggyback.
Okay. So this beautiful woman of God, I have known far longer than I claim to be my best friend. Like, girl, we have mutual friends. Because if you guys don't know, Janae and I went to high school together a long time ago. She graduated in 20.
Don't do us like that. She said a long time ago.
That 30 coming up next year for both of us.
Yeah.
So it was a while ago, but Janae was a year ahead of me, so we never crossed paths. We didn't have any classes together. There was no lunches together.
None.
Passing by, I would see you in the hallway every now and again. And of course, like you already know, at that time I had a boyfriend in high school.
Yes, I do.
I had a boyfriend in high school, and Janel and him had a class together, and I knew that they were friends because he'd always talk about class in Spanish class. You guys had Spanish too?
Yeah,
together?
Spanish.
And he'd always talk about her, and I never hear anything negative. It would always be positive, kind things. So I never knew her. I just knew she was a friend of the person that I was dating in high school, and over time, we never had any other connection after that. After that, it was nothing mutual. And even at that time, we still didn't have we weren't even acquaintances. We were just people who went to the same school.
Yeah, I don't think I ever crossed paths with you. And I also remember vividly hearing about her from her boyfriend, and then us just talking about little things in regards to their relationship. Like, not him telling me their business, but literally just like, oh, my girlfriend Janel, my girlfriend Janel. And he was always talking about her, and I could tell that he was so happy because he would always light up when he spoke about her. I'm like, who is this girl? She's probably super dope. Because in that class, we had a small group of people that always connected, and I believe his sister was in the class at the same time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think she was in the class at the same time, or in the class next to us or something like that. But that's how I got to know his sister, and I always just, through the grapevine, heard about her, and I just never got a chance to meet her.
Yeah, so we never even got a chance to get connected at that time.
No.
And it's so interesting because over time, our friendship, it really developed authentically. It was never something that we were like, let me pursue this. Because, sometimes people will see favor in somebody or similarities, and they're like, okay, well, I'm a little lonely.
Let's link.
Let's link up, girl. Let's go ahead. Yeah. You seem like you might be my cup of tea. I feel like I might be your cup of tea. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
And it never was that. And I'm going to be honest, I think I've expressed this to you before. I didn't know who you were through Instagram, that you were Janel.
Oh,
I didn't know that was you. Like, I was following you on Instagram, girl, and I don't know who followed who first, but at that time, this is like when Instagram first started, and it wasn't what it is now.
It was very fresh, very new.
Yeah.
And I don't know either, because I just remember going down my timeline and then seeing your picture on my timeline. And I'm like, okay, girls support girls.
Girls support girls, yes.
So I just started like following the stuff that you posted, and that's it.
That's how I feel like.
Yeah.
Same. Likewise.
And we didn't ever talk though, guys.
No.
We never had a conversation.
No.
And this is after high school.
Yeah.
If you can explain like that part too.
Absolutely. And I would see you on Instagram, and I knew when I followed you, I didn't know it was you, but I knew there were mutuals, because Janel at that time had gone through a serious transformation within the way she ate, exercised. She was completely unrecognizable. I had no idea this was Janel from high school. And it wasn't until you started posting progress pictures of who you were in high school, and I'm like, that's
her. Like, oh my God, that's her.
I'm like, I can't even believe this whole time, because at that time your name was
Guava Guru.
Guava Guru. She didn't have her government name nowhere on the page.
I
nowhere.
sure did not.
Did not know who this lady was. She was extremely unidentifiable. I just knew who that person was based on the content she was posting. Nutrition, workout, and a lot of spirituality content that I felt like I could connect to at that time. But once she posted who she was in high school, it was like a big reveal. I was like, oh snap, this girl is dope. This girl,
we know each other.
And I know her. And it seemed like over time we just naturally started interacting with each other's content, like on Instagram. Because I would post little things here, and a lot of the things that I would post were very similar to hers. And she would hit me up in just random small conversation. It wasn't anything lengthy. It'd just be like, oh yes girl, I agree, heart. Or we're commenting on each other's pictures like, yes girl, heart, yes. Like, it'll be like little things here and there. But that continued over a period of time, and at the time where I felt that it started thickening is when God was doing something that we both didn't even understand he was doing at the time. Because at the time, me and Janel kind of started interacting more through social media. at that time, I was in a toxic relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a stay-at-home mom. So a lot of the connections that I did have was through social media. I was also isolated because I was living out of state, and everybody that I knew in the past was living in Georgia, and I was all the way in Tennessee. So I was disconnected. I was extremely lonely. So any opportunity that connection came about, especially through Instagram, I took it. And Janel really became just somebody that conversation would come right when it needed to come. Like, and I remember telling you, I would be in some serious like dark seasons, and I'd just be like in the kitchen smiling because me and Janel having little conversation on Instagram.
Yeah.
And she even, and it's crazy, friend, because it took me a while to actually make 2 and 2 together, because when you sent me my baby shoes.
Oh yeah, from posting it on the story.
I didn't even know, like, it's a bunch of little things. And even to just iterate on that, Janel has a son, he's a little bit older than my son, and he had outgrown some shoes, and she put it on her Instagram, and I was like, girl, my baby needs some shoes.
Yeah.
There were some fly shoes.
I was like,
too.
let me just send somebody something, because at that time Zen was growing really rapidly, and just stuff that was newer was ending up getting grown out of so fast. And I posted them, and she was like, girl, send them to me.
Yeah.
Like,
and she mailed them, like, and they were at my house within like 2 days.
oh yeah. I was like, make sure that they get to her quick, because, you know, I just, at that time, I was like really focused on being connected to other moms, connected to other women that were going through struggles similar to mine. And even at that time, I was living here, but I had just left a toxic relationship as well, which that will segue into like more that we have to talk about. But we had a very similar basis in how foundationally we were going through some of the same struggles, and we didn't even know it. And it was at different times, but it was so aligned, because even you saying that you would look at my messages, I was also like, oh my gosh, I wish she still lived close, or I wish she still lived around Georgia. I always would see her post, and then I remember not seeing you post anything for such a long time. And I remember distinctly having a moment of like worry about somebody I don't even know. Because you ever had that relationship with someone on social media, and you're like,
That's your girl.
wait, that's my girl, I never met you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I know you're missing. And why are you missing? You're my friend. Let me check on you. Even if it's just that DM.
Yeah.
And so I remember just experiencing her kind of disappear and then reappear, but it was just a completely different person. And you also seemed a lot stronger in that season from the little details of what you would post. But you also seemed like somebody grabbed my hand. Like, I'm strong, but I need somebody to help me.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't figure out how to approach you healthily without seeming like I was crazy. Like, hey girl, I saw you posted this, and I was wondering, can we be friends? It was just, let me be natural, and then maybe one day. That was kind of how I thought.
I didn't know that, friend.
Yeah.
That's the first time of me feeling like hearing that observation, because I would go MIA, and it was a cycle too. I would do it quite often. Like, I would be active on social media, and then I just go into these hiatuses that would last up to 3 to 4 months, maybe even more sometimes, depending on what was going on in my life. But even our relationship, it just is stuck in my mind, and it's tattooed there because I always tell you. One day I was watching Janel's stories, and she journals, and she was posting a lot of her journals at the time. And at that time, she was sharing affirmations that she was writing out regularly. And one affirmation that she shared that I literally screenshotted the moment I saw it, I still have it in my old cell phone. It was, I deserve a forever friend.
Yes.
Because in that season, I had no friends. I was literally mothering. At the time, I was engaged. I was isolated. I was depressed. And even though I didn't know that you would be somebody that was going to be my forever friend, I knew I desired that, and I deserved it. Mm-hmm. So I took that affirmation personally, and it was almost like God sent it with purpose. Yeah. It was just like, girl, you don't even know what I'm about to do right here. I'm letting you know y'all both deserve and desire the same thing, but I'm going to set it up so naturally that when it falls into place, it's going to be authentic. And that's exactly what he did. And even with that, we just continued to support each other through the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were doing fitness training and coaching, like nutrition, you made a nutrition plan. And I supported that. I bought that.
She sure did. She was like, "How much is it?" I was like,
"What size T-shirt she got?" Like,
yeah, like every time I did something, she was in my DMs like, when can I get it? Where can I get it? And that stood out to me too about you, because I had people that I'd been friends with for so long, and even the smallest things that I did, they weren't supportive of. It was always the strangers that would support, or the strangers that would put investment into me. And then the fact that you were technically a stranger at that time and was ready to support everything that I did, I was kind of like, you know, calculating like, hey, who needs to go? Because you have so many people that know you, even family members, and you would end up realizing that your biggest supporters are sometimes people you don't know. And even when she would post things, she's a poet, if you guys didn't know. Even when she would post things, I remember watching and thinking like, okay, if she ever has something, maybe in Atlanta or in a city that I lived in, because we used to both move a lot, then I would support her. But then you also had transitioned and things changed, and she would go on the hiatus, and I would just always still have you in the back of my mind, like, oh, I hope she's okay.
Yeah. You always supported me, friend. Anything that I posted, because at the time I started coming out of the hiatus, I guess I was kind of posting kind of like motherhood content. Yeah, motherhood content. That was just a little glimpse, and that's all I had the energy for, because I could do more. I write, I speak, but motherhood is what I was doing. It's the only thing my mind could focus on. It's like, all right, y'all, I'm tired, but let me post this video, be cleaning my house.
Because I gotta clean it anyway, so you can just watch. Yeah.
Like that was it. But over time, when it was time for God to reveal what he was doing in both of our lives, it just happened. And at the time, I reached out to you.
I remember that.
Because I was transitioning out of the toxic relationship that I was in. And Janel and I had talked about so many things just in passing, that there were some things about our conversations that stuck out. And I hit her up, and I was just like, I said, please don't think this is weird, but I'm going through some things right now, and for some reason, I feel that I can talk to you about them. And she says, okay. She says, this is my number immediately. I get off of work at this time. You can call me then. And when I called you, we spoke for 4 hours, almost.
Yeah.
Like, no lie. That conversation was thick.
It was like Coke bottle thick. Like it was Atlanta girls in the 90s thick, okay?
It was thick. And even in that conversation, I wasn't fully aware of what was beginning and what was about to be birthed, because you even prayed for me, like on the phone that day. And the things that Janel prayed for, I did not know how she knew. And that's when I was like, okay, this is God.
I didn't know. That's the thing, is I didn't know. I just was allowing God to speak through me at that moment, because when you reached out to me, I remember the moment that I read the message, I said, it's about to go down. It's about to go down. And the reason why I say that is because I felt like that was literally like the moment that I knew something was going to shift for you, because you were kind of like I said, reaching out, like somebody help, but not really specifically blatantly saying it. And then sometimes when you're really strong, we have a tendency to not ask for help. So I think that she wanted to just express herself at that time, which you're pretty much like that in general. Like, she's good at expressing herself and expressing how she feels. But at that particular time, there was an undertone in the message that made me feel uneasy, that there was help needed. And I didn't know how to assist, but I just knew that I needed to be obedient and stay in contact with her. So when I gave her my information and told her what time I got off, it's like, of course I'm going to talk to her, because this seems like something more than just an in-passing conversation, that I need to be present. And we did speak for 4 hours.
We did.
What we talked about, I have no idea at this point. But at the end, we ended up praying. And I remember I had just started school. I was going through a lot. I was going through some really heavy mental health things, but I had also just started reuniting with Christ and getting closer to him to the point where I was strong enough to start praying for other people. And
that prayer was professional.
It was
it did not give.
It was definitely God
did not give
through me. Because even for myself at that time, I wasn't able to pray for me like that, but I was able to show up for you like that. So that birthed something out of our relationship that we never had previously had, particularly a level of trust, because I felt like her even being vulnerable enough to share what she went through, that made me know that this is somebody that I can probably trust.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely felt that when everything was revealed in time, trust was automatic.
Yes.
It was automatic. I literally was just expressing to you who I was.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ashamed to. And it's interesting because you have taught me that true friendship is being unashamed. And true friendship is acceptance for who you are, exactly for what you are. And I had never been someone who was just comfortable with being myself, who I am. I've always been insecure for a long time. Thank God I've been delivered from that.
Amen.
But when it's been how I've experienced friendships over time, I've always felt like my vulnerability came with consequences. Whether it be like somebody say, or just show a lack of desire to be in my life based on me unveiling who I am. And you actually did not do that. You were willing to uncover who I am, and you actually wanted to.
Oh yeah, I was like, if anybody doesn't know this about me, when I develop relationships, I want to know the person to their core.
Janel be in my business.
Yes, I want to know you to your core, because I always used to tell her when we first met, like, how can I help you or be there for you if I don't really know what's going on?
Yeah.
And not saying you have to share every single thing with your friends, or it be like this overly codependent, intimate thing. But there is a necessity for you to be transparent. And I think humans have lost that.
Yeah.
We've lost the ability to actually connect. And that's something that I'm just not for anymore. I've been through enough like inauthentic relationships of people who couldn't really accept me. And I wanted to see if I could be myself and then have you accept me.
Yeah.
While truthfully and authentically trying to accept you.
Yeah.
And it's just like when you're in a relationship with someone. You don't want to show up on a date pretending to be somebody that you're not. And then when you get married to this person, they're like, oh, she got an attitude. She's always hungry. I don't know, like, all this crazy stuff about you that you really should have right at the beginning disclosed, so that that person gets a choice to choose whether they want to be a part of your life. And when she was able to be herself, I said, I get to choose to be a part of her life, and I get to choose to love her how she is without trying to alter this person. And I'm so glad that happened, because it taught me patience with someone that I wasn't in an actual relationship with, or that it wasn't my child, or it wasn't a family member. It taught me how to be patient and not be triggered to resort back to my old behavior of just isolating and running away from friendships because it's too much work.
Yeah.
And I have a pattern of having done that in the past, because most of the people I wasn't really safe around. So
it's so funny you say that, because I was scared that I was going to run you away because I was going through so much stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm panicking a little bit because I feel this is an authentic relationship. I can be vulnerable. I know I'm safe. But because I've had people leave me so many times, I was just like, she's going to leave me. Like,
yeah, she definitely was acting like, oh, this is just, I can't do. I'm like, girl, stop. I'm like, I don't care. Just show me who you are, and that's fine. And if you be authentic with me, then I'll be authentic with you. It was like an exchange of just authenticity.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I just feel like even at the time of our relationship, God put me through so many tests, and it allowed you to see who I am. Because even in romantic relationships, you don't know somebody until you see how they deal with life.
Yeah.
You don't know them.
Yeah.
Those people can literally change just because the circumstance is not in their favor. And you saw everything that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I literally met Janel in one of the darkest seasons of my life. And I've told you this before, friend, but like, I always feel like I know God has saved my life
Mm-hmm.
because I'm covered in Him.
Amen.
But I also feel like just a relationship with you has saved so many aspects of me.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
I'm so serious, girl. I'm so serious because you know what I've gone through.
Yeah.
And you've supported
A lot.
You've supported me, friend. I have literally been able to call Janel, and God has made this woman strong. And in the season that He brought her into my life, God knew I was going to need a woman of God to be a part of my life. Because even when I was going through stuff, at that time, I wouldn't say that I was fully encompassed in Christ. I was very lukewarm.
Which is so crazy. It's so crazy because you were already, I would say, a claimant of Christianity.
That's my daddy.
Does that make sense?
That's
The
my
right word?
dad.
So she was already Christian, but it's so funny how I literally had just left New Age spirituality and then just went crazy for Christ after I had my awakening, and God was like, you are going to hell if you don't get your life together and accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior.
You just made me think of something. Go
What?
ahead, you finish. Because remember I told you I was scared of you.
Yeah. So she's like, oh, your post used to resonate with me. I'm like, girl, I was going to hell.
It was the affirmations. I want to clear it up. It was the affirmations. It was the food and the fitness. Everything else, I don't know about all that.
The crystals, yeah.
Burning
no.
sage. I
The
don't
burning
know.
the sage, the meditation in the living room with the lights off. That was just. But no, literally, I definitely feel like that experience brought me closer to God because it taught me that you can't seek the world.
Mm-hmm.
You can't seek these healing treatments. You can't seek these worldly things that just suffice for a small period of time. But she was already Christian. And so the fact that when we did get on the phone, I had just given my life back to Christ and like started walking firmly in like trying to follow the word. But you're saying you were lukewarm.
I was.
And that you were, like when we're lukewarm, we're lost. We're literally trying to find God again. We're trying to get reconnected to Him. And it's just so interesting because God will literally use your relationships to kind of like help you get closer to Him. And it's so funny because it helped me get closer to God because I saw that you were losing your fire for Him or had lost because of the struggles you went through and the things that you were experiencing. And when you lose that fire, it affects everything you do.
Yeah.
You feel so helpless almost when it comes to like, Lord, what am I supposed to do? I've done everything I can do. Like, you know? So just seeing what she was going through and then not seeing her have the closeness to God that I knew was probably deeply embedded in you, it made me wonder like, well, why did this happen and how can we get her back? That was my goal. I was like kind of like, oh, we're going to get her back. Like whatever that meant, not even just to God, but it was like, I'm going to get you back to being you and healthy. And if you've ever had a friendship where you've been in the depression season or you've been in a suicidal season or you've been in a season where you're sick physically or you're mentally not well, you are strung out on stress, okay? Yeah. Just like a drug, you're strung out on stress and you literally need someone to be there for you. So the fact that you were going through certain things and I saw how deep it was, I was like, oh no man left behind. That was the type of energy that I had because I knew what it was like to be in your shoes of like, somebody has to help me or it's a wrap. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I give up. And I've had people be there for me in the seasons where I needed help. Maybe those relationships weren't as solid as this one, but I know what it's like to be a woman who is needing another woman to tell them, look, I know it's hard, but you got to get dressed, you got to get up, and we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny you say that. As far as when you're going through so many things like illness, depression, and all the above, I was going through all of that.
At once?
I was sick when I met you. I was coming out of illness. And I also was depressed. I was suicidal. And not even just dealing with that regularly, but it was a battle that I was facing. Because I would have the highs, I would have the lows. And I was also beginning a new journey in single motherhood. And it was wearing my tail out.
Yeah, we were like, God, you gotta have some plans, because this is not for the weak.
Not for the faint of heart. Not for the faint of heart. And it was a spiritual warfare that I was going through, and God was literally strengthening my muscles, making me get those reps in. And you even saying no person left behind. Let me tell you about Janel, okay? Janae was like,
here she go.
Janae, this is my girl first and foremost. I want to give credit where credit is due. So at the time that me and Janae's relationship was developing, I was going through a lot. Like, I was suicidal, depressed, sick, going through all of those things, and it was wearing my tail out.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was a losing battle. And at that time, once I had gotten to a level of me being able to get on my two, because I was starting to get into a cycle where it was like, I'm here, but I'm just doing 360s, ain't no 180 out of nowhere. Like 2 months pass, I'm relapse. It's like an addict, like almost addicted to pain. And I was going through a cycle that I felt like I couldn't get out of, because I didn't know spiritually at that time I was going through warfare.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I just thought I was down on my luck. Life was lifing, and I just got dealt the wrong hand, And at that time, you had literally picked me up, and you started getting real with me. Like, you started getting real with me. I'm going to tell you guys what Janelle told me. She said, Janelle, because I literally have everything. And my child and I were so blessed at that time, and I could not see it. And it was so crazy that God literally used you as a way to help me give more thanks to what I had. Because it didn't look the way I desired, I did not know how to have gratitude for anything. And I literally had everything. And still was just, as Janae told me, black and white, ungrateful. She was like, you know what, Janelle? I'm really about to tell you. And I'm just on the phone listening. She's like, I just think you are so ungrateful. And I was in my mind, and I was just like, ooh, it hurts. It hurt. But it's so real. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this is my friend. Because she's not about to just sit here and let me feel how I feel and then not check me about it. Because, misery loves company.
Oh, misery has two relationships, and it's a misery and depression, misery and complaint, misery and fear. Like, she got more than one. And it's so funny because misery wants to be soothed.
Yes.
Because she's hurting.
I wanted to be satiated.
Yeah. She wants to be soothed.
Put a little iodine on my cuts. It's hurting. It's open. I got a wound. And like I was saying before we got cut off, you were not the first. You should not have been the first person I was calling in every circumstance.
Yes.
And that's when I realized I was getting codependent, because you also were going through a shift too, where God was requiring you to be more focused and isolated on Him. And I almost took that personal.
Yeah.
I almost took that personal, because I'm like, I'm going through this, but I know God is telling her to do this. And that's when you were doing your Sabbaths too. You could not get in contact with Janae on a Saturday.
Let me tell you guys, just to have that snippet and magnify it, God had literally been dealing with me so deeply in that season about relationships. And it wasn't just my relationship with her. It was my relationship with everybody. Like, even down to, like, if I had a dog, God was going to address and figure out what I needed to do healthier in that relationship with the dog. I don't have a dog, but I'm saying it was that deep to where God was so serious with me that you have to be obedient when it comes to relationships. And one of the things that I had a tendency of doing, you had the codependency. My issue was people pleasing and showing up all the time And I used to say it was just my heart and my kindness and I just love people, but it was too an addictive quality, because anytime someone asked me to show up for them, I was literally there. And it would be sometimes when I should be praying, sometimes when I should have been fasting, sometimes when I should have been seeking God for advice instead of reaching out to my friends or to a man or to someone who God had already told me to detach from. I still had the issue of suffering from that orphan spirit, and there's a video about that. You guys can watch that separately. But I was also struggling with people pleasing because of that. So he was addressing my issue of people pleasing, addressing her issue of codependency, and how he did it was like, hey, I gotta break y'all up.
Cut it off.
You ever seen two kids that are getting too close? Yeah. And you're like, hey, break it up. Get over there, go over there. Y'all are conspiring against me. I felt like God was like, y'all are about to make each other an idol. And it's so crazy because I had fasted. We both were going through different fasts. And at one of my fasts was a very short one, and I was doing the Daniel fast. And God literally told me, because we had the affirmation of, I deserve a forever friend. God had literally told me that I'm your friend.
Yeah.
I'm your friend before any friend.
Yeah.
And I felt so offended. I was like, Lord, I would never put anyone above you. He's like, but you did. But you do. Because when I call you to come pray, you're not showing up. But when your friend calls, you pick up the phone. Hey, girl, what's up? What you doing? How are you?
I'm crying.
And I was like, God, like, this is too much. But it's so crazy because before I could even say anything, she already said, hey, God is dealing with me in this area of codependency. And I didn't even have to talk to her about it, really. At first, we talked about it. But the rest of it was all God's hand over her life, just giving her revelation and wisdom for her own life that she was able to pick up and catch. And yes, when I told you that you were ungrateful, like, that was one of the hardest things for me to do. It might have seemed easy because it came out smooth.
Oh, my girl. She was spitting.
It came out smooth. I was like, girl, you're ungrateful. Like, you need to be thankful. But it was actually one of the hardest things because I had been mustering up the courage to even tell you that. And God was like, you have to tell your friend, because if you love a person, you're not going to let them keep moving that way.
Yeah.
That was difficult for me because I was used to giving people what they wanted to hear. And it developed a thickness of strength in me to be your friend, because I was able to actually have healthy confrontation of, let me talk to you about this, tell you the truth, because I love you.
Yeah.
Instead of in my past relationships, especially romantic relationships, I'm just not going to say anything. I'm going to let them do them. I'm going to let them be, and, you know, God will work on them. Well, you don't get anywhere like that, especially if you have poor communication.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes so much sense, friend. And even with, you know, the obedience that we both had to go through for you to break people pleasing and for me to break codependency, because you were further rooted in Christ, he used you as a leader. Like I always say, girl, you're like my big sister.
Yes.
Like I always say
Sisters.
that. Yeah, you're my sister. But I've always felt that because you have more of you were a leader, Janel. And I don't know if you know that, but you are a leader and you have a energy and a spirit that is worth following. And God really used you in the seasons that were appropriate, because even you kept leading me back to God.
Yeah.
You would just be like, I would vent to Janel sometimes, and I would literally like be wanting to be sued. And she would be like, well, girl, I mean, like I always say,
don't pray about it. Go talk to God. And then it's so crazy because I remember saying that and feeling like, Lord, am I losing my ability to be empathetic? You know, I wanted to make sure I was still being empathetic. It's so crazy how much stuff you think about when it comes to friendships, and it don't even be that deep.
Yeah, it does not.
It's
We
not.
take it personal.
Our trauma literally oozes out into our friendships and our relationships and our community, and it makes it so hard to have a healthy friendship. And that's why I value our friendship so much, because we never let our wounds take over our relationship.
Yeah.
We never let what happened to us cause us to be disconnected from where God is taking us to. And I love that. I love that when I talk to Janel, I can literally tell her anything, even if it's about herself, or even if it's about myself, or even if it's about someone else. she's going to say, okay, I'm going to think about that. Where I've dealt with so many people, the moment you share authenticity, there's rejection. So I appreciate you for being a good listener. I appreciate you for being vulnerable. I appreciate you for communicating clearly your emotions, even if those emotions were led by fear or the past or trauma or anything. You were clear about your emotions, and it was my job in that season and still moving forward, that when you have a friend that's expressing themselves and their feelings to you, to address their feelings and acknowledge those feelings and validate those feelings, but also lead them back to God and lead them back to the awareness that you're not your situation or your circumstances.
Yeah.
So I thank you for just being yourself, Janel. It's really hard to find people that can be themselves, even if that person or our inner self is not as beautiful as our outer self, because we've been through so much.
Yeah.
And I think people are afraid to be themselves because they don't want you to see anything imperfect. And it's like imperfection is what makes us thrive. We got something to work on, now we have purpose.
Yeah.
But if you're always hiding that, you're not going to grow.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you remember I told you, I was like, girl, I really feel that I might, and I said, I feel that because of how I'm living, because at that time I wasn't living the way that God desired for me to be living.
Yeah.
And I was like, girl, I don't want to misinfluence you. And I honestly felt like insecure at this point, because I was just like, I am so broken. And I have this woman who has gone through her seasons and she's done her work. And I'm also showing her who I am. She can see me. Like,
oh yeah.
And I was showing you everything. Like,
oh yeah,
it was
definitely an open book.
It was raw. It was so unfiltered. I hid nothing from you. And because I did that, it just brought insecurity. And I got to the point of insecurity to where I felt like, okay, I know who I am because I know someone else sees me. And I was just like, Janae, I don't want to be a negative influence to you, because I see where you are, I see who you are, and that just, all of that was rooted in insecurity in itself, because it was almost like I had no confidence in being able to grow out of where I was.
Yeah, I think at that time you confused your season for your personality and the woman and your character that you are. And I always would remind her, like, if I abandon you in the season where you're at your worst, I'm not your friend. That's not what friends do, because there's going to be seasons where I am on my lowest and I'm not at the point where you see me today. And it's funny because it's transitioned into that over time, where there were seasons where I'm in a dark place and you have to be the person that gives a little encouragement or pushes us through that next phase of friendship and says, well, friend, I get it, but we gotta keep it going. And she's very like strategic about just getting things done. So I also needed someone that was similar to me in that way, because I can't have me being the strong person all the time and then not have someone strong to support me. So as much as you saw insecurity, I saw authenticity, and that helped me remind myself, like, in our worst, we are still able to show up and be real and be loved, you know?
Yeah.
That was my goal, is to remind her that you're lovable at your darkest and your lowest season. And then also, it felt good to be friends with someone who I knew wouldn't be there for long. Because if you didn't know it at the time, I knew that those were temporary moments. I knew that was because of what you had been through and what you had to get through. I didn't ever for 1 second doubt that God was going to pull you out. Number one, because I was praying for you. Yeah. And number two, because I knew who she was before that trauma had occurred that put her in that dark season. I didn't know you personally, but I had enough information about her to know that God had his hand on her life and that he would never neglect you. But you had to like receive him. And same for me. I had to receive him. And it just so happened that we were at different stages to where my receiving him at that time was a support enough to be there for you.
Yeah. I definitely feel that God literally did everything he did at the right season, even with you being obedient in the Sabbath, literally like isolated me, like made me go into isolation because you were leading the way that a woman is supposed to lead in a friendship when she's following Christ. I definitely feel like as women of God, we have a responsibility to our sisters who are lost. And at that season, Janel, I was. And you just continue to do the due diligence of praying for me, leading me back to Christ.
Yeah.
And we tell each other this all the time.
Yeah,
like,
all
we
the
be
time.
like,
We're like,
I be telling her, I'm like, Janel, if my husband don't love me the way you love me when I find the one, he ain't it. If my husband is not praying over me, redirecting me to Christ, allowing me to be authentic and loving me for who I am, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it. So I'm just very grateful that with everything that has encompassed our friendship, you being a leader in Christ brought me to Christ. And our friendship became so much stronger.
mm-hmm.
Like, who we are now versus who we were, completely
different.
Completely different. Irrecognizable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's God. It's no other person who could have been the reason as to why this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that has happened in perfect timing. Like, when you want to talk about God's timing, that thing is no joke.
No, it's no joke.
I could have not imagined when I was 15, 16 years old, the girl that my boyfriend had class with was going to be my best friend.
Oh no.
At almost 30 years old.
Yeah.
It would have not crossed my mind at all, because
Yeah.
we didn't know each other. We just were people who passed in passing.
Yeah, and I definitely was done with Georgia. Like, I was planning on never coming back until I was forced to come back. So just things that were connected to Georgia because of wanting to never have to come back and repeat cycles. I wasn't really expecting to have to connect with someone through this state again. So it was really powerful that God literally led me from, I was living in Louisiana. I was living all over the United States, literally moving all the time in my previous relationship. And he led me back on the map to Savannah, Georgia. And from Savannah, I came back to Atlanta. And from Atlanta, she relocated here from
Nashville, because I moved a lot too.
Nashville,
The same
Tennessee.
reasons, yeah.
So we have been so many different places in different states that God strategically moved us on the map to where we would end up being within close proximity of each other.
Yeah.
And before she even came to Georgia, she was telling me that she had lived in some places that were low-key so close that we could have probably passed each other again in those other situations. But God ordained it to where we would meet again, be close enough to be able to experience each other, for our children to meet, and for us to also be support systems to each other. Like, our friendship is so wild.
This is my sister.
We even worked together. Like, this is crazy. We worked
did.
together for months. And even that was such a blessing because working with you,
We were doing our own
we did our own thing, y'all. We should have been let go. We should have been let go. No, we did our job. We did our job. It's just, we also made time for our friendship. And we made time for us to have intimate moments where we talked about things and expressed ourselves. And I think that season built us even stronger.
That was the only season work was the only time we had.
Yeah, we didn't have time for friendship
in that season.
Mm-hmm.
The only time we had.
Yeah.
Literally, God really put everything in perfect position to where we'd always be able to cultivate our relationship. And that's why people say if God's not in it,
then it's a wrap.
it will fail.
It will fail.
It will fail, because if who I am wasn't who I am and I was living in the world, everything you did I would have took personal. Oh, she not answering my call on Saturdays? Okay, that's not my friend no more.
That's not my friend.
Okay,
she only looking out for me.
Yeah, she can only see me at work. Okay, that's not my friend. And it's like, no, that's not the truth. God has to put you in positions for both of you guys to be strong enough to be able to handle what I'm preparing you for.
Amen.
Because we always talk about to whom much is given,
much is required.
and if y'all aren't ready, if them arms ain't strong, you will drop it.
You will drop the weight, and the weight of waiting on God to fulfill the promises that He has for you is very heavy to carry alone. but it's not meant to be done alone. It's meant to be done with God.
Yeah.
And so in our friendship, one of the biggest blessings is that we learn to remove codependency on each other and to seek God first and then come together in our relationship as friends. And it's so crazy because that's going to translate into our marriages. When we get married to the men that God have for us, that God is like really working on right now, in Jesus' name. When we get married, we're going to have to go to our partner before we go to each other about a problem in our relationship. We're going to have to go to God and pray to him before we go, girl, guess what my husband just did? And guess what, you know, whatever his name will be, guess what he just did? We cannot gossip about our men. We cannot go through codependent relationships and try to lean on each other for support when we should be focused on a relationship with God and the relationship we have with our spouse. So we have even had conversations in depth about, girl, when you get married, oh, girl, when I get married, or girl, when this happens, girls, when our boys grow up, there will be shifts. But the great thing about it is because we have a healthy foundation and we worked out stuff in the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
And the devil mad. Who cares? Because we are going to be strong enough and rooted deep enough in Christ as individuals to come together and make very good decisions when it's needed, and also to separate certain things that are supposed to be separated but still be able to enjoy them with the community that we've built within each other.
Yes.
Because I don't need to know certain details about her man. I don't need to know certain details about their marriage. But if they seek me for counsel, I'm a woman of God first. And if I seek her for counsel, she's a woman of God first. So we can ask each other for support. And even our partners can probably ask each other for support because they're going to be rooted in Christ.
Correct.
But if we didn't have that, we would have totally went into other toxic relationships. We would have been two codependent, hurt trauma mamas. Single trauma mamas bonding
Single
over that.
Mamas.
Bonding over that.
We don't want it.
And I've done it before, you know, and it's nothing wrong with that. When you are in those things happen. But trauma bonds are not something that we want because we want healthy things that last forever.
Yes.
At least as long as we're alive on this earth.
Yes.
So I want to thank you personally for acknowledging things that you wanted to work on in yourself, sharing with me things I can work on. You know, there was some times where she just told me recently, you gotta stop apologizing all the time. Like, I apologize a lot out of just traumatic experience in my past. And you taught me to acknowledge that. Even though God had been speaking to me about that, she confirmed it. So I thank you for being vulnerable. I thank you for correcting me, godly correction. I thank you for seeking God on your own and reaching out to God for your help in seasons where I would have supported you and tried to carry something for you, but I would have dropped it too because I wasn't that strong. I thank you for loving my son authentically as if he is your blood. I thank you for continuously affirming me, pouring into this relationship, investing in me as a woman. I thank you for making it a point to show up for your child and your family and the things that you have going on so that you're a representation of a woman of God and doing the things that God called you to do so that I'm able to acquaint with you and be your friend and be there with you and walk with you on this walk. I thank you for loving me regardless of the imperfections and the flaws that I had, because yes, you went through your brokenness, but your girl was broke, like snipped in two. And even coming from, I always tell you guys about losing my parents, but this girl has adopted me as a sister verbally and physically and spiritually, and confirmed and reaffirmed that so many times that you're my sister. And I have people that I know for years, and we do not have that relationship. And it's not a comparison game, but it's just to show that when God is in something, it will be very different than what you experience when you try to put stuff together on your own.
Yeah.
And that goes for friendships, marriages, goals and dreams that you want, paths that you want to walk down. If you are not putting God at the center of it and allowing him to lead it, it will be carnal, it will fail, and it will eventually fizzle out.
Yeah.
So I really thank you for just claiming me as a family member, being there for someone who was orphaned in spirit and in the physical realm, to have someone that I can have as a family member and who's gonna love me like we grew up in the same house, and for doing the same for my son. For doing that for my son.
I love you guys. Like, you and Zane, you're my sister as far as Prince knows. Like, you're his TT. Zane sees me TT.
Mm-hmm.
They're cousins, and they're
Mm-hmm.
always gonna be cousins. And I'm so grateful for you because I have 3 sisters, and I've never felt the love of a sister the way that I feel from you. And it's because I'm the youngest. Like, my sisters are much older than me.
Yeah.
So you coming into my life in the season that you came in, Janel, like, I really have to thank you, because not once did you ever judge me.
No.
Not once. Even when internally I felt some sense of shame, you never looked at me and judged me once. You have loved me for who I am, authentically, wholeheartedly. I just want to thank you for your obedience, because you doing what God told you to do has literally been the pillar of why our friendship is what it is. I am so thankful, friend, that you held me up in the darkest season of my life and pointed me back to the light, because my light was very dim when I met you, extremely. And you still looked at me, you saw my heart, and you were just like, no, we're going to bring you back out, and I am going to make sure that you don't ever have to go back to wherever you were before this.
Yeah.
I am so grateful that you are my family friend. Like, you are my family. Like, blood cannot make us closer, and we are blood related, because Christ died for our sins, and we are covered in the blood.
Plus the lineage of slavery that brought us to the United States.
When we go out, people they ask us,
are you sisters?
And I'm like,
and it's our light.
Yeah.
It's our light. It's our connection.
Yeah, people
and
ask.
They will definitely ask that. And even when our boys are together, I'm pretty sure people just assume they're cousins. It's just a natural experience. So.
Yeah, I'm just so thankful for you, friend. Everything that you've done, the value that you've added to my life. You've shown me true, authentic friendship. And I have never, ever experienced anything like the friendship I have with you. And I'm grateful for you. You know I'll go to war for you.
Oh yeah, she'll fight.
I don't play about this one. Like, I do not play about her at all. So you know I'll go to war for you. And anything that you need, you know I got you. And you likewise have been here for me and my son to be just a part of the village that we built up in this transition of my life. So, girl, I'm just so thankful for you. And I love you so much. Girl. For everything.
You're welcome.
For real.
Yeah,
I'm very thankful for you.
I'm very thankful for you too. And I'm really grateful that as we go into the next season of our life, we have God, number one. We have common sense, number 2. That's like so rare these days. And we have faith. We have faith. Like, I can never share a goal with her too big. I can never share an idea with her too big. That's another big thing for me in our friendship, is that we can dream together and those things are realistic to us. Other people, you know, some people are drunk off the haterade.
Yeah.
Some people are drunk off of the sabotage. Some people are drunk off of fear. And so I feel safe sharing my dreams with you, because I know you dream just as big for yourself, if not bigger sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for where we're going and what God is doing in our friendship and what he's going to do through this video, and also what he's going to do in the future. But we don't talk about that.
LOL.
I'm not calling y'all a loser.
LOL.
But no, I'm excited because God really has his hands on our friendship. So what he's going to do within us and through us is going to be so amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that you guys are getting to see like the beginning stages of something that God is going to really elevate within our friendship and within our businesses and within our ministry and the things that God is calling us to do. So I'm excited that you guys were a part of this, and I appreciate you for coming on the podcast channel.
Thank you.
You guys, she also has her own social media platform.
Yes.
She's on YouTube now.
I am. I have not been fully obedient yet.
It's okay.
It's coming along. God has already put it on my heart to go ahead and do His work. And I also am a poet, like Janel said. So
yes.
If you want to, you can look me up on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music. I'm on Instagram. Everything. Janel, Janel Lauren. It's so funny you brought my socials up. I was like, can I shamelessly plug real quick?
Yeah, of course. No, literally, before we go, I would like to put everything below in the description so that you guys can go support her. And please, go there with good intentions.
Yes.
Okay, go there with positive intentions to just support and share maybe like how this video or any of her content has touched you. And if you go follow her on her social media platforms, you will also be able to connect to her poetry and any other things that she is working on. So I'm gonna put everything below, and then can you just say it one more time?
Yes, you guys can follow me on all social media, all streaming platforms. I am Janel, that's Janel, the letter K, just K, period, Lauren. So Janel K. Lauren, that's your girl.
Okay, so go follow her, go support. I'll link her stuff below. And if you guys have any questions or anything that you want to ask us, or just anything that touched you from this video, please go ahead and comment below and just give some feedback about watching this video and what you feel God did in this particular time of us spending
I enjoy this.
girlfriend time.
Yes, I
feel like we're just feel like we're working.
I love spending time with Janel, so I'm very glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, we had fun. Like, this is actually fun for us. So definitely share your feedback. We appreciate you. We thank you, and God bless you. I hope that you have a wonderful day. And until another time, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, girl.
You too, girl.
Yes.
Good job.